Hey everybody, I want to take a few minutes and talk about year-end testing and evaluations. It's something that can be a little intimidating until you know what you're doing, and then it's a piece of cake. So let's get started. First, I want to welcome you to Wiser Homeschool. I'm Amy Harrell Smith, and I am so excited to share with you how you can make year-end evaluations simpler. Now, of course, for your state, you're going to need to check your own regulations. I'm not going to tell you that what I'm showing you meets the requirements of your state. You're going to want to make sure of that yourself. I can tell you that a lot of states would accept what I'm about to show you. And actually, for me personally, I'm not even required to do this testing to comply with my state's regulations, but I like to do it anyway. I like to do standardized testing about once a year, basically when my kids have finished with a grade level. And so actually just moments ago, I finished testing my youngest two, third and sixth grade. They've both just finished up. So I have it all fresh on my mind, and I want to show you how simple it can be. So as many of you know, we've used BJU Press Homeschool for over 12 years now, have had a lot of success. Our oldest is graduated now. She's 16 years old, doing great in college. If you want to hear more about our experience and our story, you can check out my BJU review video that I posted a few months ago. And then also we have some other videos here with tips for how to make BJU work for you. But one of the things that I love about BJU is that they make it so easy for parents to access standardized testing. So actually the way I do it, and now I'm sure there are other ways that you can access this as well, we use the Iowa tests of basic skills, and we get them directly from BJU through our BJU Press Homeschool account. Now, the initial step that you'll need to take the very first time is to get yourself set up as a test administrator. It is super simple. It sounds intimidating, but it's not. You can easily become approved to be able to administer these tests in your own home. Now, there is an option as you go through this process that you can make yourself searchable to other people in your area if you would like to be available to administer the tests for other people's children as well. But you don't have to do that. I have never made my profile public, so to speak. I always keep it private to where I am only administering tests for my children. Now, this is a one-time process to get approved, and then every year you will get an email from BJU reminding you to just reaffirm your testing account as an administrator. And you'll just go back in there, confirm that your information is correct, confirm that you do or don't want to be in the searchable listing for administrators in your area, and that's that. So once that's done, you can order tests for your children and give them at your own leisure in your own home according to your own homeschool schedule, whatever fits your need. So when you go on the website, I'm just going to assume that you're going to order from BJU for right now. You're going to go on, you're going to select the grade level that you're testing. You're going to choose whether it's a fall or spring test in some cases. What I like to do is I like to get the spring test because that's the test that's being used at the end of a grade level. So if I'm ever choosing between fall and spring, I want to typically grade my children or test my children at the end of the grade level. So for example, we just got the third grade test for our son who just finished third grade. I wanted him to take the test that comes at the end of that year. So that's what we got for him. Now in schools, they may test them twice a year. I know that's what we did when we were in private school. We would test in the fall and the spring. I'm not interested in that. I just want one annual test that lets me know kind of where we are in certain things. And even then, there's so many variables in these scores that I have learned my lesson. Don't let the scores be earth-shattering to you, but hopefully we'll get to that here in a little bit. Now, when you order your testing materials, make sure that you get the directions to go with the packet that you need, and then as you check out, it will prompt you to enter which child each test is for, just for accountability and recording purposes. And then you'll need to enter a test date. Just know that that test date can be fluid. I usually try to put in a date that's maybe 3 weeks out so they don't feel like I'm trying to rush them on the fulfillment side. But really, as soon as you get your test, you can go ahead and do the test. They do have a deadline in with your materials of the latest that you can return those materials to them. So you can't just keep it and sit on it for months and months. But if you get it and you had planned to do it on the 28th and now it's the 29th and you haven't gotten to it yet, that's okay. You've still got some leeway there. So that test date is a little arbitrary, but again, you just can't wait long times. So usually what happens is I put a date in that's a little after what I want. And if the materials arrive early like they did this time, I'll go ahead and do the test, send it back to them, no problem. So I just want to tell you what to expect when you get your tests in the mail. Now, once you've placed your order, you can expect to receive a priority mail envelope with your testing materials, and it'll come with the directions. As long as you make sure you put that in your cart. Come in with the directions for you to administer the test, and comes with the booklets that the student will use, and then the answer folders where the children do their little bubbles for their answers. And then you will also have a few extra things. You'll have a packing slip. That's just for your reference. And then they'll give you these instructions. It's a little kind of pamphlet. Now, BJU does also offer the Stanford OSAT, and I used to use them, but I switched over to Iowa because the support changed a while back for Stanford, or I think actually Stanford changed and discontinued some things with their tests. So I went to Iowa, tested basic skills, and to me, you could use either one. I actually like the way the Iowa tests present their results to you. And to me, it's a little easier to understand, a little more eye appealing, things like that. But you could do either one through BJU. But anyway, this little pamphlet sort of thing is just going to give you instructions for, how to fill out the name and the different information on the answer folders, things like that. And then everything you need to administer the tests is written out for you verbatim in those test booklets. Whether or not it's a time test, whether or not you're allowed to repeat instructions, what kind of help you can give them, all of this kind of stuff. Everything is detailed. So especially your first time or two, just really read through those instructions, the directions booklet that you get really thoroughly, and make sure you understand it. Now, if you're like me and you took these tests when you were a kid, you're already pretty familiar with the process. But even if you're not, it's not complicated. It's just a matter of adhering to the standard that they set and keeping the integrity of the tests, basically, keeping the tests secured when they're not in use, making sure kids can't be rifling through them, looking at stuff, no cheating, things like that. It's pretty straightforward. So you'll administer those tests. We used to cram and do them all in one day, but I felt like the kids were maxing out and I was concerned that that was affecting their scores. So we usually do it in 2 days, but I could also see where some families might choose to do it over the course of 3 days. Again, just to kind of avoid that brain friedness, that kids can get after a while. But we did ours this time in 2 days. And what was nice this time, we were testing 3rd grade and 6th grade. And there are some of these levels in the Iowa tests that even though the booklets are different and they're being tested on easier or harder material, their segments coincide. So I was actually able to have both children at the table starting and stopping at the same time for each segment. And then, of course, their material, like I said, is completely different. And so it was actually really convenient because I've had other years where I was testing multiple kids and they were all on different, kind of staggered time frames. And that made it a little trickier. But anyway, again, it's pretty straightforward. It's not super complicated. And then basically when you're done, you pack up, you have a tester kind of an affirmation that you have to sign saying what dates you did test, which children were tested and which grade levels. You have to enclose that, the answer folders, and all of the booklets, your directions and the student booklets. Put all of that back in a packet to go back to BJU. They do give you this envelope in your initial package. They give you the return envelope. It's not postage paid, but that's kind of minimal. So basically, we're going to take this to the post office. We are going to send it certified mail so that we have tracking if anything were to happen to it. BJU also recommends that you make sure the package is insured up to $100 just because there is reusable stuff in here that if that was to get lost or damaged, somebody's going to have to pay to replace that. So that's something to keep in mind. So once that's done, and we're going to send that off tomorrow, so our entire testing process consumed partial parts of 3 days. It took 2 days for testing, and then we'll make a trip to the post office, and that's that. Once that's sent in, give them usually about 2 weeks, sometimes maybe 3, and I'll get an email from BJU letting me know that our test scores are loaded into my account, and I can log into my parents' account and download those PDF test scores straight from my parent account there on BJU Press Homeschool.com. This is not the same as your homeschool hub. Just don't get those two confused. So this is actually my account with BJU Press. And so that's that. It's pretty simple. And then there's a lot of explanation in with those scores. And anything that you don't understand, you can always Google, what is a Lexile score? What does this mean? You can go ahead and Google and kind of get more context and information for some of those things. And one thing I will note is that if you have children who are naturally competitive, like mine are, you're going to want to encourage them to take their time and to really think through their answers and everything before you start administering the test. Explain to them that this is not a pass or fail test. This doesn't affect their grades in school. This is just something that lets everybody know we're on the right track. And you could just put it that way. I will say that it is very easy, at least in my state, to meet what the state would consider acceptable. I already mentioned that I don't have to do these tests. If you were testing, they want to see your child test in a certain score. And so basically, let me explain scores for just a second. There are several things when you get your score results. You're going to see a national percentile. You're going to see where the child ranks nationally among other children in that grade level that are taking that test. And then you're going to see something called a grade equivalent. And let me just explain from my understanding what grade equivalent means. It doesn't mean you should skip 3 grades and put your child in 12th grade because they're reading at a 12th grade level. What it means is that they scored on this test the way that a normal 12th grader would score if they were taking this test. Now, that's my understanding. If any of you watching understand it differently, please let me know. But what that does is it still means that they're doing excellent in that. Say your 6th grader scores reading at a 9th grade level or math at a 9th grade level. That still means they're doing great. They're way ahead of grade level on this subject, but it doesn't necessarily mean you should start skipping grades. Now, sometimes I personally, this is off the record, I'm just telling you what I would do. If I see a huge gap like that and see that they're doing really, really well, then I may go look at my curriculum and see what would we be missing if we skipped ahead 1 grade level in this subject or in this subject. Do I feel like we already have those concepts enough that we could afford that leap? And I have been successful in skipping grades with my children, but that wasn't based solely on standardized test results. So I just want you to keep that in mind, that if you do get your test results back and they're soaring, that's awesome. Give them lots of praise and rewards for doing so great and really, brag about them, do all the good things, but don't make your decisions based solely on that. On the flip side, if their scores come in and they've tanked, don't stress out, okay? And I do know this feeling too, because going back to the thing about being competitive, I found that my 3rd child, whom you have heard me speak about before, at one point on his test, he was racing to try to be the first one done. Well, his scores that year were awful. Now, I'll get back to the thing I said about state regulations. He still met the state regulation because the state sets the bar fairly low. I will just say it that way. There's something called the National Stay 9, and that's what I was getting to after grade equivalent. The National Stay 9 is a number from 1 to 9, and in our state, if you hit a 4, you're doing acceptable. So it's not too hard to hit a 4 in your core composite. And you'll notice too on these test results, if we just look a little more closely, you have something called the core battery or core test, core composite, and then you have like a complete composite. So what they do with that, and I actually appreciate this, is the complete composite is everything, all of the subjects. The core composite leaves out science and social studies. I appreciate that because what I found was in the very early grade levels, Social studies and science are kind of hit and miss. And what I mean is, when you think about them, these are concepts that when you teach them, they're not always chronological. With math, you kind of have to start with counting. And eventually you're going to have to move to addition and subtraction. And you're going to have to get that down before you move to multiplication. Like, math builds on itself. English, as far as grammar, does the same thing. But with science, you may have one first grade class that's talking about the 7 days of creation, if it's a Christian school, or you could have them talking about the 5 senses. You could have another class that's talking about parts of the body, or, earth science, things like doing leaf collections, or, looking at different kinds of insects. Like, there's so many different facets to science, and they don't necessarily all build on each other the way that math or grammar have to do. And social studies is the same way. You could have one 5th grade class that's studying United States history, and another 5th grade class could be studying world religions or world history. And so you could have people in different focuses. And when they're in those young age groups and they haven't had time yet to be exposed to a lot of these areas, then it is really common for the science and social studies scores to come in looking really low. And it used to bother me until that kind of clicked with me. And I realized that the older my kids got, the more those scores started catching up with everything else. So just don't be alarmed on something like that. But jumping back to when my child really tanked, I really think it was because he was just racing. He was trying to beat everybody else and get done with it. And he doesn't like the test in the first place. So there's the whole thing, So I learned with him that either he's got to know that he's being tested at a different time than the other siblings, or I have to make it really, really clear to him, like I did yesterday. You two are going to be testing at the same time. Your stuff is harder. You're in a higher grade and your stuff's harder. I don't want you racing to try to finish and beat him. And I really had to talk about it with him first and get a promise from him that he was going to try not to race through it. And hopefully that was successful. Stay tuned, right? So I know this has been kind of around the block here with the Iowa test and with national testing in general, standardized testing. But I hope this gives you just a good understanding of kind of how it all works, and maybe just alleviates that intimidation of the unknown, right? Because again, it feels intimidating, but it's really not. And to me, it's simpler than having to arrange for an evaluator to come and evaluate my children, or whatever the different processes are that people can go through for either meeting your annual progress notification, or just for your own peace of mind, just to know that, hey, we're pretty much on track here and we're not doing awful. We're not falling behind. We're doing pretty well. So I hope this helps you. But as always, hit me with any comments, any questions in the comments. And if this has been helpful at all, please like and subscribe. And if you know anybody who could benefit from it, please share it with them as well. As always, check out wiserhomeschool.com. I have free and paid resources that are there to help set you up for success and for excellence in educating your kids. I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Have a good one.